They thought they had me figured out. Every Sunday lunch, my grandkids dropped hints like crumbs. When you're gone, Grandpa, this place will be ours. They laughed as if it were a joke, but their eyes always landed on the old brick house, the garden, the porch swing that creaked in the summer heat. My house, my life, my bones in the walls. I stayed quiet. I let them dream. Let them measure curtains in their heads, argue over who'd take the bigger bedroom. Because sometimes silence is the sharpest knife. The day finally came when the lawyer gathered them in my living room. The air was thick with dust and anticipation. Their perfumes and colognes didn't belong here, too sweet, too eager. They leaned forward as the man opened the folder. He pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table. Inside was a single key. A silence fell. Confusion first, then irritation. What's this supposed to mean? My eldest grandson muttered, holding up the brass key that caught the weak afternoon light. It opens the shed out back, the lawyer said. His voice was flat, professional. They all stood at once, chairs scraping. I followed them slowly, my cane tapping against the porch steps. The shed door groaned as they turned the lock. And inside? No stacks of cash, no hidden treasures. Just my old wooden swing, the same one I'd built when their mothers were children, and dozens of framed photographs covering the walls. Black and white pictures of summers long gone, Christmases, fishing trips, birthdays, every memory where I was the one giving and they were the ones taking. I saw their faces twist, anger, disappointment, something close to shame but not quite reaching it. Is this a joke? One asked, his voice sharp. No joke, I said finally. My throat was dry, but my words cut steady. This is what you got. Every smile you gave me when you wanted something. Every promise you broke. This is the inheritance you earned. Behind them, the lawyer cleared his throat and added what they hadn't expected. The property was transferred months ago. The rightful owner is listed here. He held up a document with a new name. Not theirs. A boy's. A quiet orphan I'd mentored through school, the only one who ever knocked on my door to ask how I was, not what I had. The grandkids stood frozen in the shed, trapped between the swing and the photographs, surrounded not by wealth, but by the truth of who they were to me. Outside, the wind rattled the loose tin roof. For the first time, they looked small, and for the first time in years, I felt tall again. They didn't leave quietly. The shed door slammed so hard the frame rattled. My eldest grandson, Eric, jabbed a finger in my face. His tie was crooked now, sweat breaking on his temples. You can't do this. We're your family. We deserve that house. Deserve. That word. Like they'd earned it. I leaned on my cane and let my eyes travel over each of them, 4 grown adults, all with their polished shoes and hungry eyes. Family remembers birthdays. Family visits when the porch light's on and the old man's sitting alone. You showed up only to measure curtains. They shifted, uncomfortable. My granddaughter, Melissa, tried to soften her tone. Grandpa, you don't understand. That boy, that orphan, he's nothing to you. Nothing. My voice came out sharp enough to cut her sentence in half. I sat through every parent-teacher meeting of his that had no parents. I paid for his textbooks when nobody else cared if he passed or failed. He's more blood to me in spirit than you've been in years. The lawyer stepped forward, his briefcase snapping shut. Everything is legal. The deeds have been filed. The matter is settled. But it wasn't settled in their faces. Not by a long shot. On the walk back to the house, I caught the sound of Eric whispering to Melissa, "He's old. Maybe we can challenge it. Maybe he's not right in the head." I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Their voices carried like snakes in dry grass. Inside, the air smelled of coffee gone cold. My chair creaked when I sat, watching them linger by the door like vultures circling. Their eyes started around the living room, the clock I'd wound for 40 years, the photographs of my late wife, the hand-built shelves. They still thought it might all slide into their pockets somehow. Eric finally spoke again, a smile forced onto his lips. "Grandpa, maybe we can talk this over. I mean, you don't want outsiders in the family home, do you?" I chuckled, low and humorless. "Strange thing, Eric. Outsiders are the only ones who ever treated me like a man instead of a wallet." The silence was heavy. Only the tick of the mantel clock filled it. Melissa broke first, her voice trembling with anger. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, leaning forward, cane across my knees. "But you'll regret it more." They stormed out, the screen door snapping shut with a final crack. I stayed seated, heart steady, eyes on the porch where their shadows vanished down the walk. Out back, the shed stood in twilight. The swing inside swayed slightly, though no wind moved. The photographs on the walls seemed to look back at me, each one a witness. And I knew this was only the beginning, because children who grow up greedy don't stop at disappointment. They plot, they scheme, they claw, and if they were coming for me, they had no idea just how ready I was to meet them. They didn't wait long. By the following week, letters started showing up in my mailbox, thick envelopes with lawyers' names stamped across the top. Contesting mental competence. Review of testamentary capacity. Words that tried to paint me as senile, broken, unfit to know my own name, let alone sign a deed. I held those papers under the yellow kitchen light, the smell of last night's coffee still bitter in the air. My hands didn't shake. Not once. I'd poured concrete in storms and hammered beams in 100-degree heat. I knew what it meant to hold steady when everything else tried to move you. Melissa called next. Her voice had that sugar-coated tone, but beneath it was steel. "Grandpa, you don't want to go through court. People will talk. It'll ruin your reputation. Why don't you just fix this quietly?" "Fix it?" I asked, staring out the window at the bare oak tree in the yard. "The only thing broken here is your memory of what family means." She hissed through the phone. "That boy doesn't deserve it." "We do." Click. I ended the call first. Felt good, that small act of control. The orphan boy's name was Adam. 17, thin as a fence post but sharp, the kind of sharp that notices everything. He came by after school, his backpack slung low, his eyes cautious. "Sir," he said, standing awkwardly at the doorway, "they came to my foster home. Your grandchildren. They asked questions about me. Ugly questions." I motioned him inside, the floorboards creaking under his hesitant steps. "And what did you tell them?" "Nothing." I walked out. "But they said you'll realize you made a mistake." I poured 2 mugs of coffee, one mostly milk for him. The steam curled between us. "Adam, listen close. I've built my life with my own hands, and I've seen plenty of snakes crawl into worm barns. The trick isn't to scream. It's to build a trap and wait for them to crawl in deeper." His eyes flickered with something between fear and admiration. "So, you're not giving up?" I laughed, the sound rough and cold. "Give up? Boy, I haven't even started." That night, I sat at my old oak desk. Pulled out folders I hadn't touched in years. Bank ledgers, property deeds, photographs of every community project I'd funded quietly. I stacked evidence like bricks, one on top of the other. They wanted a courtroom battle? Fine. But the moment they tried to drag me through mud, I'd bury them under a wall of truth. And still, beneath all the strategy, a darker thought pulsed steady. They hadn't just insulted me. They'd threatened Adam, the only one who hadn't asked me for a dime. That moved this from inheritance to war. Out on the porch, the wind picked up, rattling the loose screen. The shed stood in the distance, its silhouette sharp against the moonlight. I imagined the grandchildren plotting, whispering, calling lawyers. Let them, because the next move would be mine. The first strike had to be mine. I'd spent too many years playing the quiet provider, letting others talk over me while I kept roofs standing and engines running. Not this time. I started with the town paper. Old friend of mine, Jim Carter, still ran the opinion section. We'd poured foundations together back in the 70s, before his knees gave out and he picked up a pen instead of a hammer. I invited him over for coffee, spread the photos across my table, Adam in his honor roll sash, Adam with his science fair ribbon, Adam holding the toolbox I'd given him when he turned 16. Jim didn't need prompting. He looked at the stack of letters my grandchildren had sent through their lawyers, then back at me. His eyes hardened. "You want the truth told," he said. "Not a question." "I want people to see who's who," I answered. "Let them judge with their own eyes." The article ran 3 days later. Local veteran funds teens education, faces family backlash. My phone didn't stop ringing. Old neighbors called to say they were proud. Folks at the diner slapped me on the back. Even Pastor Raymond mentioned me from the pulpit, said it was a sin to covet what you hadn't earned. That Sunday, my grandchildren showed up on my porch. No smiles this time, just anger wrapped in polite voices. Eric spoke first, his jaw tight. You humiliated us. Publicly. Why drag the whole town into this? I rocked slowly in my chair, the wood groaning beneath me. Truth has a way of dragging itself out, son. I just gave it a nudge. Melissa's cheeks burned red. We'll see you for defamation. I leaned forward, cane tapping the boards between us. Sue me, and the whole county will hear how you came sniffing around the shed like dogs waiting for scraps. Silence stretched. The only sound was the wind tugging at the flag I kept over the porch, faded but still standing. They didn't storm off this time. They lingered. Eric bent close, voice low enough for only me to hear. You think you've won because you've got some skinny kid and a sympathy article. But we've got money connections. We'll tear that boy apart in court. We'll make you look crazy. And when the dust settles, we'll be standing in your house. I didn't blink. My voice came out cold, clipped. Try it. But remember this, every time you push, I push back harder. And unlike you, Eric, I've been fighting battles since before you were born. They left with their threats still hanging in the air. But that night, sitting alone at my desk, I knew one thing. This wouldn't stay a legal fight. They'd already tried to poison Adam's reputation. Next, they'd come for me in ways dirtier than paper. So I began phase 2. I called an old buddy from my construction days, now working security for the county. He owed me more than one favor. By the end of the week, I had cameras up around the house, motion lights installed, and copies of every letter my grandkids' lawyers had sent me backed up in 3 places. Adam came by on Saturday. I handed him a folder thicker than a brick. Keep this safe, I told him. If anything happens to me, you take it straight to Jim or Pastor Raymond. His hands trembled when he took it, but his eyes were steady. I won't let them hurt you, he said quietly. I almost laughed. A boy promising to protect me, the old man who'd spent a lifetime building and defending. But there was something fierce in his voice, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about teaching greedy grandchildren a lesson. It was about giving Adam the family he never had. That night, as the crickets screamed outside and the shed creaked under the moon, I sat by the window with the weight of my decision pressing against me. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. They struck harder than I expected. It started with whispers around town. At the diner, I caught 2 men at the counter lowering their voices when I walked in. At church, a woman who'd known me 40 years avoided my eyes. Even the postman hesitated at my porch. It didn't take long to trace the poison. My grandchildren had hired themselves a slick city attorney who knew how to bend rumor into rope. They spread it that I wasn't well, that I'd lost my memory, that I'd been influenced by a manipulative teenager. Some even claimed Adam had tricked me into signing the deed. The real stab came when I walked into the bank. I'd been cashing checks there since Nixon was in office, knew every teller by name. But that day, Mrs. Ferguson, the manager, pulled me aside with a tight smile. Mr. Whitaker, we've received inquiries about your capacity to manage accounts. Until things are clarified legally, we may have to limit certain transactions. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the smell of disinfectant sharp in my nose. My hands clenched the counter. Inquiries from who? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. By the time I got home, my mailbox was full of glossy pamphlets, advertisements for nursing homes, as if someone thought I'd be browsing retirement options like vacation packages. Adam found me standing in the yard, fists tight around the mail. They're trying to bury you alive, he said, his voice shaking. I tossed the papers on the porch. Then let them dig. They'll hit bedrock before they hit me. But the attacks kept coming. Anonymous calls at night, voices whispering, old fool. Sell the house. Stop embarrassing yourself. The sound of laughter before the line went dead. Tires screeching past my property at midnight. Even the shed wasn't safe. One morning I found the lock broken, the swing overturned, photographs ripped from the walls and stomped into the dirt. That one hurt more than the rest. Those pictures weren't just paper. They were proof of a life, of sacrifice, of everything my family used to mean. I stood in that shed with the smell of mildew and dust thick in the air, staring at the torn faces of my wife, my children when they were still innocent. My knees nearly buckled, but anger steadied me. I gathered every ruined photo, laid them out on the workbench, and brushed the dirt off like I was preparing them for battle. Adam stood beside me silent, his jaw clenched. Finally, he whispered, "We can't just defend anymore. We need to hit back." That was the moment I knew the boy had steel in him. I called Jim, the reporter. This time, I didn't ask for kindness. I asked for exposure. We went through every letter, every voicemail, every torn photograph. Jim's eyes widened. "You want this public?" he asked. "Every filthy detail," I said. "Let the whole county see what happens when greed eats family alive." The article dropped like a hammer. Front page, bold headline, "Grandchildren accuse veteran of incompetence, orphan at center of inheritance battle." They printed photos of the destroyed shed wall, the swing tipped over like a body. The town roared. Half of them stood with me outraged. The other half whispered even louder, feeding the drama like flies on meat. My phone rang all day. Some calls were offers of help, others were threats disguised as advice. By nightfall, Eric himself called, his voice sharp as broken glass. "You think this makes you look noble? You've humiliated us. If you don't reverse this, we'll make sure you die in court. Alone." I almost laughed. "Court," I said. "Son, I've been in rougher fights than paperwork and suits. You're the ones drowning, not me." I hung up, heart steady. But deep inside, a realization grew like fire. They wouldn't stop until they either broke me or destroyed Adam. And I couldn't let either happen. So I made my decision. Defense wasn't enough. If they wanted war, I'd give them war, the kind they never saw coming. That night, I lit a single lamp in the living room. Its glow spread across my desk as I laid out blueprints of my plan. The papers cast long shadows, like soldiers waiting for orders. Outside, the crickets screamed, but I barely heard them. By dawn, the first strike was ready. And this time, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was setting a trap. The trap started with patience. I'd learned that back in the days when I built foundations for a living. You don't pour concrete too fast. You set the forms, brace the edges. Wait until everything is solid. My grandkids thought they could break me with speed, rumors, lawsuits, midnight threats. But I wasn't in a hurry. I was building something that would last. Step 1, information. I called in a favor from Harold Jennings, an old buddy from my union days who now worked in the clerk's office at the county courthouse. Over burnt coffee in his cramped little office, he slid a folder across the desk. Deeds, filings, everything tied to your name the last 10 years. But here's the part you'll like. Your grandkids filed petitions against you, claiming diminished capacity. They're betting on convincing a judge you've lost your marbles. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My jaw tightened. Then let's show them whose marbles are rolling. Step 2, exposure. I invited Jim Carter, the reporter, back to the house. This time I didn't just give him letters and photos. I gave him recordings. I'd started taping the late-night calls, the hissing threats, the mocking laughter. Jim's eyes widened as he listened. This is gold," he whispered. "If the town was split before, this'll push them hard to your side." But it wasn't enough just to turn the town. I wanted my grandchildren cornered, their own greed gnawing at them until they cracked. So step 3, bait. I placed a notice in the local paper, not under my name, but under Adam's. It read simple: estate items for sale, rare antiques, furniture, tools. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., Whitaker property. By dawn that Saturday, the yard was full of neighbors curious about what the old man was selling. Cars lined the dirt road, the air buzzing with chatter. Adam stood beside me, nervous but determined. "They'll come," he said. "You know they will." And come they did. Eric and Melissa showed up furious, shoving through the crowd. "What the hell is this?" Eric barked, his face red. "You don't have the right to sell property that belongs to the family." The neighbors went quiet, ears pricking like hounds. I raised my voice just enough to carry. "Belongs to the family?" I said, pointing at the crowd. "You mean the family that abandoned me for years?" Or the boy who studied here, worked here, cared for me when you didn't. Gasps spread. Eyes shifted. And for the first time, my grandkids looked small, two spoiled children caught screaming in front of half the county. Melissa tried to recover, sneering. He's manipulating you, Grandpa. He just wants your house. I laughed, short and sharp. Funny. That's exactly what you want. Difference is, he's never asked for a thing. I gave it freely. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some clapped. Others shook their heads at my grandchildren. The weight of public shame was heavier than any lawsuit. But I wasn't finished. That night, Adam and I sat in the shed, the air thick with dust and the faint creak of the swing. On the workbench lay the torn photographs I'd salvaged. I had carefully taped them back together, piece by piece, every face a reminder. They hate me now, Adam said quietly. They fear you, I corrected. And fear makes people sloppy. And sloppy they became. Within a week, I got word from Harold again. My grandchildren had filed for an emergency injunction, claiming I was liquidating assets recklessly. But the kicker? They'd forged signatures, pretending to act as my guardians. Harold showed me the papers, his eyes wide. This isn't just greedy. This is criminal. I felt the old fire in my chest, the kind that kept me standing when younger men quit. Good, I muttered. Now I've got them exactly where I want them. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. And I was done waiting on the porch. I knew they'd make one last move. Desperation always smells the same, sour, frantic, like milk gone bad in summer heat. My grandkids had lost the town's sympathy. They'd lost their polished masks. All they had left was venom. It struck late one Thursday night. I woke to the sound of tires crunching gravel, headlights slicing across my bedroom wall. The dogs down the road barked, restless. My cane leaned by the bed, but I didn't reach for it. Instead, I sat still, listening. The crunch of boots followed, then the slam of my shed door. I shuffled to the porch, the cold biting through my flannel shirt. From the shadows, I saw them, Eric and Melissa, flashlights sweeping, their voices low and urgent. Grab everything, Eric hissed. If we can't have it, he can't either. Melissa laughed, sharp and ugly. Let's see what the old fool says when his shrine burns. That word froze me. Burn. I moved fast for an old man. The porch steps groaned under my weight, and both flashlights swung my way. Their faces flashed white, guilty as children caught stealing candy, except this wasn't candy. Melissa held a can of gasoline. Eric had a lighter. You've lost your minds, I said, my voice cutting the night air. This is your answer? Fire. Eric smirked, though I saw the tremor in his hand. You pushed us here. You humiliated us. If we can't win in court, we'll erase the whole damn story. No shed. No photos. No proof. The fury rose in me like heat off asphalt. I stepped closer, cane digging into the dirt. You call those photos proof? They're memories. My wife. Your mother's when they were children. The only good parts of this family left. And you torched them because you didn't get your way. Melissa's lips curled. You left us nothing. I leaned forward, close enough for them to see the fire in my eyes. I left you exactly what you earned. And tonight, you're about to earn something more. That's when the floodlights blazed to life. The yard lit up like a stadium. Adam stepped from the shadows, holding his phone steady, its red recording light glowing. Beside him was Officer Green, the county deputy, my insurance. Eric's smirk vanished. Melissa dropped the gas can, the clang ringing in the night. Officer Green's voice cut like a blade. Step away from the shed. Now. The sight of law behind me made them falter, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. You thought you could scare an old man in the dark, I said, my words sharp as nails. But you forgot one thing. I built this house. I built this life. And I know how to protect it. Every move you made, every threat, every lie, I've been stacking it like bricks in a wall. And tonight, you just handed me the cornerstone. The deputy cuffed Eric first, then Melissa, reading their rights as neighbors peeked out from porches, whispers spreading like wildfire. Their faces twisted not from shame, but from the sudden sting of exposure. As the cruiser pulled away, red and blue lights strobing across the yard, Adam stood beside me. His voice was quiet but steady. "You planned this." I nodded. The night air smelled of gasoline and fear. They wanted to take everything. Instead, they gave me the one thing they can't buy back: proof. The shed behind us stood untouched, though the swing inside swayed as if it had felt the whole fight. The photos on the wall seemed to breathe with relief. But I knew this wasn't the end. Court still waited. Reputation still hung in the balance. And Eric and Melissa? They were cornered animals now. That made them dangerous. Still, as I stood under the floodlights with Adam at my side, one truth burned steady in my chest. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for him, for every kid who'd ever been told they were worth less than blood. And come hell or high water, I intended to finish this war. Courtrooms are colder than cemeteries. Maybe it's the air conditioning. Maybe it's the way people whisper as though justice is fragile and might shatter if spoken too loud. When my case was called, I rose slow but steady, cane in hand, Adam at my side. He wore a borrowed suit, sleeves too short, but his chin was high. Across the aisle, Eric and Melissa sat with their lawyer, some city man with a silk tie and a smirk that said he'd already cashed their retainer check. Their eyes avoided mine, but their posture screamed arrogance. They still thought they could twist the story, bury the truth under paperwork. The judge began with the petitions, claims that I was incompetent, senile, manipulated by an outsider. Their lawyer spoke with syrupy venom. "Your Honor, this is a clear case of undue influence. My clients merely wish to protect their grandfather's legacy from being squandered." Protect. The word made Adam flinch. When it was my turn, I stood without notes. My voice was gravel, but it carried. I poured foundations for 35 years. Built houses in this county that still stand. Every paycheck I earned, I stretched to feed my family, to raise kids who grew into the parents of those two over there. And how do they repay it? By calling me crazy, by tearing photographs off my shed wall, by trying to set fire to the only memories I've got left. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Eric's face drained pale. Then Adam stepped forward. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger. He told them about the nights I helped him with homework, about the textbooks I paid for, about the afternoons I sat in the bleachers when no one else showed. He pulled out the folder I'd given him, the letters, the threats, the photos taped back together. One by one, he laid them on the judge's bench like evidence in a war crime. The final blow came from Officer Green. Calm, direct, he described the night he caught Eric and Melissa attempting arson, the gasoline can, the lighter, the recordings. Jim Carter's article was entered into the record too, the town already knew, but seeing it stamped official made it heavier than stone. Their lawyer tried to recover, stammering about youthful mistakes and misunderstandings. But the judge's face told the truth. He wasn't buying it. When the gavel came down, it sounded like thunder. All petitions dismissed. Property transfer stands. And charges against the grandchildren will proceed separately. The silence that followed was electric. Eric's jaw hung loose. Melissa blinked hard, as if trying to wake from a nightmare. I felt no triumph, only clarity. This wasn't about winning. It was about drawing a line in stone. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. As we left, the reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, questions flying. Adam shielded me with his thin shoulders, and I let him. He deserved his place in the light. Outside, the autumn air cut crisp. The courthouse steps glared white in the noon sun. My grandchildren were dragged out the side door in cuffs, their heads down. For the first time, I didn't feel smaller for losing them. I felt taller for standing my ground. Adam tugged my sleeve. "You okay?" I looked at him, this boy who had started as a stranger and ended as my true family. My voice came out steady, final. They wanted the house. I gave them the truth instead. I paused, let the weight of it settle in the air, then added the last words they'd never forget, and the truth is mine to keep.